Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us in the third and the final segment with Mahal Musa. We've talked about a lot of different subjects, very interesting, empowering discussions, and I know that all of you are going to have your different takeaways from it. So please read more about Mahal Musa. She's on Instagram, and she also has a brilliant website that you can read up on her courses and all the amazing offerings that she has. Maha, in this segment, what I want to talk about is you've had three babies and three different pregnancies. I want to talk about the experience, your natural birth experience, and how all three of them have probably been similar or different. And then I'll get into a few more things after this discussion.
Hmm. Well, that's a good question to start with because, as I've mentioned before, my older boys are 21 and 24, my daughter 12. So I had a big gap between the two boys, different father for the daughter, for my daughter. So my first son was born in 1996 and my second son in 1999. So not even in this century, last century, which is weird. um, and again, I was living in a beautiful place in Australia, Byron Bay, which is very much a progressive place. It's an Aboriginal women's birthing place. There's a birthing lake there. Yes, it's a very, very strong Indigenous place. It's a beautiful landscape, the mountains and the ocean. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And it's always been the center in Australia for progressive thinking, for raising consciousness. It's actually in a big caldera, which is a volcano, a very old volcano. Very, very powerful energies here. So, and also because I've come again from Palestinian Lebanese background, my Palestinian grandmother on my father's side birthed 9 babies in our family birthing house in Al Kubab in the village in Palestine, which no longer exists. But she birthed with a midwife at home. So that already was in my blood, in my knowing, in my veins. So I never came to birth in a fearful way. I came to birth with an expansive, wide eyed, inquisitive curiosity to know what is this amazing experience going to give to me. So I think that that put me in very good stead for having, as you say, natural birth, or as I say, uninterrupted, unmedicated, physiological, spontaneous birth. So my first son was actually born 6 weeks premature. And I was in England and I came back to Byron Bay. I was about 28 weeks pregnant with his father, who was English. And we came to Byron and we had to set up a house. We had to set everything up from scratch. And, I thought, okay, I've got 12 weeks, another 3 months. I was, six and a half, 7 months pregnant. So I've got plenty of time. And I joined the Byron Bay Pregnancy Support Group and, it was beautiful, got to meet other women. And then I went into labor at 34 weeks. And I'd been backpacking through Europe. So I wasn't as strong as I probably should have been. I know my iron was very, very low, but I knew I wanted to have this physiological birth and I wanted to have a home birth. So in Byron Bay, the pregnancy group, you could choose from 12 home birth midwives. So you, as the mother, interviewed the midwives and chose the midwife that you resonated with. Yes, that's how it was in those days. And that's how it should be now. You should, as a birthing mother, be able to choose the care provider or not, whoever you want to be with you at your birth, really. But especially your midwife, because that's really important. Who's going to be with woman, with your woman? Are they with their own woman? Are they on the same page as you? Do you energetically resonate with this person? All of these things are vitally important if you are aiming to have physiological birth. We don't talk enough about the emotional and energetic tenements of physiological birth, which is what I talk about a lot in Embody Birth. We need to really harness those things that make us feel, not make us feel, but where we feel safe, secure, comfortable, able to express, able to open, because birth is a sacred rite of passage. So I was fortunate in my first son's birth to know these things and know what it was that I wanted. And of course, being 6 weeks premature, I couldn't have a home birth. So I had to go to hospital. and the labor just came on. I was offered steroids, which I refused because I wanted to have it as naturally as I could. I didn't know what the steroids would do to my body. I didn't want any interference. And so he was born in a hospital, which was about 40 minutes from Byron Bay. And my midwife came, my home birth midwife came with me. And, that's where I got into doing all of the movements of the belly dance, where I was very autonomous, very connected to my body, talking to my baby. In the evening, we came to the hospital the next day. The obstetrician checked me, and I was about 7 or 8 centimeters. He wanted to break my waters. I looked up and I said, "You're not going to touch me." And he was sort of mumbled to himself, "Oh, so shocked this woman won't allow me to touch you." No, it's my body, it's my consent, it's my right to say what I want for this birth. So he walked out of the room, and then my son was born, and it was all went very well in the birth, but he wasn't breathing. So his lungs, which is what can happen at a baby of 34 weeks, 28 weeks you can be born and your lungs can be formed. 34 weeks, they may not be. And he was unlucky in that regard. And so he ended up being, helicoptered away to the city hospital, which was about 2 hours away. So I came home without a baby, which was a huge thing for me. But because I'd been taken from my mum as a baby, I kind of saw the pattern and the connection, the resolution that I had to, be exactly where life was showing me, because birth is about life, life is about birth. And I had to meet what it was showing me. I couldn't resist what was happening. So a lot of those things I understood about birth. So it's not just about having a natural birth. It's about understanding birth as a rite of passage, a transition from maiden to mother, or mother again. Whatever needs to be shown will be shown to you in your birth. And the question for me is, can I meet and can I face everything that arises in birth? That to me is the opportunity for the transformation, which I think we spoke a little bit about in the first session. So that was his birth, and I actually started to breastfeed him on day 4 in the hospital. And from that moment, he made a huge improvement. As soon as he got my colostrum, the milk, he was on a ventilator, 100% ventilation, which was very difficult to see. He was in the ICU, and, it was a very difficult beginning for him and for me as a mother. But again, I just had to keep pulling and drawing on my strength. And I think the fact that I had a physiological unmedicated birth helped me. I was strong. My milk came in. I was clear. I wasn't drugged. And so I think that strength I could pass on to him. And I would sit with him in the humidity crib, and he had all the wires and the ventilator, and I talked to him. I'd reassure him. So even though there was great difficulty, there was also great joy that I could be with him through all of this difficulty and challenge. So that was my first son, Kailash. And then 3 years later, I had my second son, Tariq, and he was born at home. So he was actually 2 weeks early, but he was able to be born at home, and I had a different midwife, and I was living in a beautiful country cottage. I'd actually separated from his father during the pregnancy, another big story, but I'd found a beautiful house in the country on a beautiful property. My friend Premila, who I'm still friends with now, she's 85 now. So I birthed my baby in the beautiful cottage on her property, and I wanted to be in the Mother Earth. I wanted to be on the land with him. I really had this desire, and he would talk to me, and I talk about this psychic highway between mother and baby. He guided me to where I needed to be. And because I was able to listen to my baby's guidance, I followed naturally where I needed to be. So I was very strong in that pregnancy. I did a lot of meditation. I did a lot of yoga. I did a lot of belly dance birth, and I ate really well. And I really came into the second layer of my body, which was the healing of my father. I had a very abusive father, and I had a very difficult father. But in this pregnancy, I was able to start to open that portal to forgiveness of my father. So each pregnancy gives us opportunity to open, to heal, or to joyfully expand on the beauty of who we are, our family line. So it's not always about healing in a negative sense. There can also be healing in a beautiful, opening, and positive way, which we don't often hear about. And that is what pregnancy will direct us to, and our babies, and talking to your baby and dancing with your baby and really building that solid connection and relationship between mother and baby. And he was born at home in the water, a beautiful lotus birth, and it was absolutely divine. And my first son was there for part of it. It was actually his sleep time, so he was getting a bit ruffled, but in part of the labor, he was pulling on my nipples and he was following me everywhere, just very naturally. It was amazing, which helps the oxytocin, yeah, and the hormone and the expansion and baby moving into a good position. And I was doing all my beautiful dancing, feeling really relaxed. My friend had put flowers everywhere through the cottage and outside. It was absolutely beautiful. And the cows in the paddocks, and it was it was a day birth during the day. So he was born. And what was interesting though, when he was born, was that I was in the water, the midwife was sitting behind me and my partner was next to me. And when I brought Tariq up and put him on my chest, both my partner and I we kind of held our breath. And the midwife, who knew about the first labor and my son not breathing, even though it was a different midwife, she just gently laid her hands on my shoulders and she just said, breathe. And both of us, my partner and I, and then he cried, he breathed. It was the most magical, amazing moment. It was so beautiful. Yeah. And so again, I understood that birth is about energy. It's about emotion. It's about life. It's not a sterile, cold, act or experience that women are presented with. It is a place to grow and transform and heal and become the woman we are meant to be. And that woman gives her voice and her jewels to the world. That is what physiological, natural birth is about, from my perspective. It brings tears.
Yeah,
This is
it
what
is
we are
powerful.
robbing, very
So
powerful. We're
powerful.
robbing women. We are robbing women
Mm-hmm.
of understanding birth on this somatic, spiritual plane.
Mm-hmm.
And then my daughter, new relationship. I met a new man, and in many ways we weren't really suited, but we got together. He'd never had children. I was 43. I actually had an early birth miscarriage with him. And then a year and a half later, at 45 and a half, I conceived my daughter. And I always felt her around us, and really strong spirit. I could feel this warmth and this light around me every time I was with her dad, even though we knew that we weren't suited long term, but it was just, she was hovering around me. And I knew that I was going to conceive with this man. And 45 and a half, my boys were 8 and 11. So now a big gap. And amazing. I was over the moon. I was so ecstatic to think that I've got another chance to birth. And of course, I planned a home birth, water birth, lotus birth with the beautiful midwife, Jane. So I've had 3 different midwives. And what I love about the choosing of a midwife is that relationship of trust that one builds up with one's midwife. And it's a powerful relationship that, for me, those relationships have lasted a lifetime. I'm still friends with the 3 home birth midwives, very good friends with the last 2. You know, we are in the circle of womanhood together. You know, we are with woman, with each other's woman. And I love that. And I think that's very ancient, indigenous kind of way, that when that woman is with you, that midwife, you cultivate that relationship as a very special, deep relationship for life. It's not just someone passing through the corridors of the sterile hospital that you'll whizzes through or that you'll never see again. This is meaningful connection. And your children stay connected to that midwife too, which is also beautiful. So Amina was born at home, again, a beautiful home water lotus birth on the same property as her brother had been born 8 years before. I had left when he was young, and I came back 6, 7 years later to the same property. So I've birthed 2 children on this land. It's very special to me.
Wow.
And with Premila, yeah. And again, all of the belly dance birth, that's when I made my video series, Dance of the Womb. When I was pregnant, there I am, pregnant at 46.
I've seen these pictures. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, in my core program. And so I was able to create a beautiful video series. And yeah, and I knew this was the last time I was going to do this birthing personally. So I wanted to do it all. I really envisaged what I wanted. I felt strong. I'd done it twice before. And now was like the icing on the cake to really bring this baby forward. I didn't know that it was a girl, but I had a feeling. I was wearing pink a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, I felt very feminine and soft. And yeah, another home water lotus birth. And it was a very powerful experience again. And in her birth, I had a very deep trauma healing, a spontaneous healing around my father again. So it was like what had happened in the second birth came deeper in this third birth. And I had to really face some very dark things within me. In the middle of the birth, I was in active labor. And I say that this is what birth is also about, clearing layers, clear layers. So our children can be born through clear channels. We can birth our children. They don't have to take on what we have had to take on. We clear those channels in the birth. And that's what happened with Amina. I won't go into that, but it was a very strong experience when I was in active labor, and my whole labor stopped for this clearing to happen. And I was in tears, crying and crying and crying. Huge release. And I talk about it in my training, and I share it sometimes. It was an amazing thing. And I realized from her birth the power of what we as women get to experience through birth. And again, how we rob women of experiences that we are supposed to have. We are supposed to have. So humanity evolves consciousness. We are the bearers of that alchemy to transmit a new kind of consciousness. Breath, sound, movement, the experience, the somatic play of birth, the poetism of birth, the mystical side of birth, the mystery of birth. All of these things are meant to be, and also they give us the skills and the knowledge and the intuitive power to mother our children, to know what we are doing, because we know what we are doing. We inherently know. The fear comes in to try to deconstruct that knowing. And that is what I'm very strong about in embodied birth, bringing us back to wholeness. You are a whole woman, birthing your whole baby, and your whole body in your holiness. This is what we must come back to.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's my 3 births in a nutshell.
That's a lot of giving. I can only imagine how it would be for mothers to be in a physical space with you. There's so much to take, and I would love maybe someday to have you in India working with women. That would really be something amazing.
I've been to India.
Yeah,
I was
told
there.
me. You've told
Yeah,
me.
2017.
But you were there for the conference.
Their human rights childbirth
But
conference, yeah.
you haven't done the kind of embody birth program the way that you do it in China. You haven't done that in India, have you?
Once. I did a
Once.
3 days.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I
Okay.
did a 3-day one, but it
Wow.
would be lovely. It would be lovely just to come and just talk and
That
share
would be
and,
amazing.
you
Yeah.
know, do all that. One day.
I'll make it happen someday. I would really, towards, as we kind of come to the close of our conversation, there's just a few things that I want to talk about. I think the second last thing being, why do you think that birth doesn't seem to be so natural anymore? Why are so many stories C-sections now? Why are so many birth stories jeopardized now? Why, I mean, everything seems to be a problem. If the baby is in a breach, okay, it's an emergency. If the baby has the umbilical cord around them, it's an emergency. I mean, I don't understand how all of this was dealt with before operations existed. So why do you think that is so much now?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that we value women and mothers? Do we actually value and revere mothers?
I wish I could say yes, but I don't think so.
So there's your answer. There's your answer. That at a foundational level, what we are seeing is the deconstruction of woman and mother.
Also, because pregnancy is also, I feel like pregnancy is not dealt with, like you said, the rite of passage. I feel like it's more dealt with what's going wrong with it. Like, what's the problem? What's the sickness part of it? What are you lacking in it?
That's right. Because we see a mother's body as a pathology. We see it as an illness. When you view a mother's body through the lens of illness, the clinical pathology lens, there is money to be made in that. If a woman is to be seen as a mammalian, physiological, perfect structure for birthing, there's no money in that. It's like the breastfeeding. If I breastfeed my child to 8.5, the formula company can't get to me and make money. But if they make me fearful of my body, so what we are doing is the misogyny, it's the patriarchy pushing this idea that a woman's body in and of itself
is not enough.
Not enough. It's not enough. That's right. So the fear takes over every woman, wherever I teach, whether I've taught in India, China, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, America, wherever I've taught, every single woman talks about fear and pain of birth. This is what walks before any idea of it being a spiritual rite of passage or a portal to higher consciousness. And it is extraordinary how we have been entrained and conditioned to fear our own body and our own baby. How incredible is that? Even the powers that be, who are supposed to assist and guide and help us if we need it and support us, also have that running through their own psyche. So women have to start to believe that they are whole, that they know how to give birth. This has been happening for thousands and thousands of years. How do we instill that back? And for me, it's through the body. And for me, through the dance. When I put on that Arabic music, that sensual, beautiful music, and I close my eyes and I connect to my baby and I breathe and I feel, what is happening is I am accessing and activating the wisdom of my womb. And in that wisdom, everything lies. Everything I need is there for me. Fear doesn't sit in there. Expansion and connection and knowing, ontological knowing. I know, but I don't know how I know. I know this. It's not from here. It's in the body. So that is why I do this somatic work with women. And every woman has her own unique story, her own song and dance. Yeah. I say in Embody Birth, allow the song and dance of birth to unfold. Step back and give that space for this dance to unfold. But what we have is people on top of us doing something. Care providers think if I'm doing something, then I'm useful. No, it's about stepping back and just being, creating the space of being. You as a care provider have to feel that in your own body in order to help that environment of birth, that nectar of expansion and trust, not meddling, not fiddling, not touching unnecessarily. And you told the story, they wouldn't let me, I wasn't allowed. Who has the right to come in on your spiritual journey of birthing this soul to the world and interfering in that? That is your personal evolution and story to build your consciousness of your family, your community. We don't value birth from that context. It's about making women diminished and smaller in order to have power over them. And I'm even talking about midwives too. In the industrial, system, midwives have to unlearn. They've got to come back to themselves, being with woman, your feminine. How does she navigate the world? It's an emotional heart connection. And when we can give this respect back to birth, a woman's body will open. A woman's body will flower and open in that kind of environment, that essence of deep listening and deep trusting and stepping back to create that space, because birth is about expansion. The uterus contracts, but my body has to expand. My cervix soften and open. My baby find position with me. I'm working with my baby. It's not an experience of limitation. It's an experience of surrender and opening. You cannot expect a woman's body to open, surrender, to release, to let go in an environment that has a hierarchy, someone at the top and it all goes down the line. That's not how a woman's body will open. We open in circles and spirals and figure eights and the way nature moves. That's how we open. And that's why women have success at home birth, because we create that environment that we feel safe and comfortable. Our body and our baby can move in this environment. And if I'm stuck, I have someone who is patient. Patience, the most underestimated care in birth. Patience with a capital P. What we have is impatience, rushing, making it happen. No wonder women's bodies freeze up and constrict and hold on, hold that baby back. You cannot birth in fear, but you can birth through your fear, which is very different. So I can birth through my fear successfully when this environment, this space of respect and reverence is held, and this space of holiness. And we know in India, when you enter a temple, you take off your shoes, you are quiet, you center yourself, you respect the temple. That is what our womb is, the temple. Yet we think that we can undermine the beauty and the sacredness of her temple. We have to change, Meha, the language that we use. We have to change the tone, and we have to change who we are as care providers if we are to see women birthing in their truest power. We are not there to make money from this experience. Yeah. It's not paper over people. It's people who are the most important. And the legacy of this birth with this baby will last a lifetime. You can get a woman in her 80s and she remembers her births. This is something that is imprinted in our womb and the resonance of our baby, of our child. Yeah. That will always be. Think about what it is that we are doing very, very carefully.
I think the most beautiful takeaway from this is we can't birth in fear, but we can birth through fear. And I don't think it needs any more questions. I don't think we need to. I mean, the last segment would have just been if something that you'd like to say to women, but I think the answers were quite there. I think there's enough said here for women out there to listen. I think the major trouble is with feeling disempowered, probably because our power has been taken away from us so many times, the
We allow
system.
it to.
Yeah, we
And
allow
we
it.
allow it.
Yes, I mean, I have students complaining all the time, telling me that my father did not let me do a belly dance class. And I think that's where the problem begins. Women, since they're little, have been told what they can or cannot do. And the decisions of a woman's life or a little girl's life seem to be in the hands of men. And I think that's really sad. And I feel like for me too, I mean, since the beginning, okay, this is partial placenta previa. And I think it was just ingrained in my mind that, okay, whatever happens, baby needs to be safe. Baby needs to be safe. I thought of having a home birth, but they suggested it otherwise. And I think a lot of it, you start believing everybody else before you start believing your own voice. Your inner voice is telling you something, and then people on the outside, but people who also care about you, your family, or they're concerned, and then they also say things otherwise. And I think that what I hear right now is listening to your own instinct is what has to power through. It is really, you have to go deep. And I mean, of course there are cases that need medical intervention, and I understand all of that, but I think we as women need to really go back into our instinct spaces, go back deep into what we want, how we want it, and be informed and just educate ourselves and bring ourselves to that space and find a support system that's going to give us what we need for that final day.
And we can't wait to be valued.
Yes.
We need to value ourselves. And that's what this is about. And it's not saying that, you're stubborn and you have your inner voice and nobody else can shift you. No, what it is that if we are woman baby centered, we center ourselves first and foremost. We ground in ourselves. And then from that place, we ask for guidance. We look for assistance. We become informed. We might evidence-based, whatever it is, but we must have the solidity of ourselves and our baby at the center of the experience, because it's happening in my body. Yeah, this is my temple. What is it that I'm cultivating in that temple? And then who do I invite into that space? Yeah. I'm only want to invite those people who I feel safe and secure with, who understand me. Yeah. Who give me that voice.
Yeah, that makes
and that
absolute
respect.
sense.
Yeah. And so we say in Embodied Birth, the living book is within, read her.
Yeah.
And we are writing the new chapters of our book every day. Yeah, every day.
Maha, before we end the session, where can people know a little bit more about you?
Yes. So as you said, I'm on Instagram, Maha Al Musa, my website, mahaalmusa.com. And I've got 2 beautiful programs that will take you on a deep dive excavation into birth preparation. So that's all online for doulas, birth keepers, and mothers to be. I've got a beautiful, as I showed you before, video series, Dance of the Womb, my beautiful book, Dance of the Womb as well, award-winning book endorsed by Dr. Michelle O'Donnell and lots of other amazing people. And that's also an ebook. So that's all on my website, mahaalmusa.com. I'm sure you'll probably leave that for people. Yeah. So, and I do counseling all over the world as well, but very much this kind of emotional counseling, really hearing where you are at, what obstacles might be in the way, just very much intuitive, transformative counseling. And I work a lot with women who are just about to give birth as well. They contact me because they've had all the bullying and the this and the that, and they feel completely out of their body. And they just have a session with me to bring them back home, you know, back to that solid foundation. Yeah. And I do that all over the world. So yeah, get in touch with me anytime. Interviews, podcasts, webinars. And, you know, as I mentioned before, I'm 58. I'm hopeless with all the technology, but I'm always looking, you know, collaborations. I'm now the elder, 60 next year. I want to collaborate with the younger women. I'm reaching out to the younger woman to say, I'm here. I've got a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. And, you know, there's some of us elders, we are here. We want to pass on our knowledge. So seek us out. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me, Maha.
Yeah.
This has been absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to do a little bit more studies, and there's things that you've told me to check out on your website, and I'm going to do that. And I think for women out there, like Maha said, she's available if you want to get in touch with her for a personal session. Get the book, get the DVD, and just, I mean, probably this is that one spot where you could start with reclaiming what is already yours.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Maha. Thank you for being so patient and sharing all your wisdom with us. It's been
And
really
as we say
beautiful.
in body birth, mama stay, mama stay.
Namaste. That's perfect. That's perfect. Namaste.
Yes, mama.
Thank you, Maha.
Sustaining body birth.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Love.
Thank you.
Bye, darling.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.